For everyone watching, this is Helen Hanna Casey, who is the CEO of Howard Hanna Real Estate Services. We're talking about how this year has been for Howard Hanna and your family of companies, which is growing, as you mentioned, with the acquisition of Rand Realty. Can we dive a little bit more into, and I want to talk about your background a little bit too, but dive into how your agents are doing as well, because you mentioned some of the, adopting the back end systems has been terrific, that, you've had some hospitalizations, but in general, I mean, you have, is it 14,000 agents now under the umbrella?
12,000 agents plus employees. And so we're very fortunate because we have not had terrible losses, and we have had times where people have been, we've closed down departments and we've done the deep clean because somebody has been tested positive to it, and we've done, and we've quarantined. So we've had that experience in various places, but fortunately, we haven't lost anybody that was close to us. And we're overall just lucky to have gotten through to this point as we look at what happens next.
Well, I'm really, really glad to hear that. That's wonderful. So you've been in this business for a really, really long time. So this is not the first bump in the road that you've seen. I'm curious. I mean, so your parents started the company, right? And your sister and you took over sometime after that. Do you mind kind of retelling your background of how you got into real estate and running this company?
My parents started the company in 1957, and as a residential brokerage company. Actually, there's three of us in the family: my brother, my sister, and myself. We came in, we all got licensed at 18. My father was a one-office company. He had an appraisal division also, but he started the company, and it grew slowly. As I said, he brought an appraisal business, and they did property management. They did a little of everything, like everybody in the 50s. The difference was my dad hired women in the 50s when most people didn't, and that made a big difference. I think it made a big difference to us seeing what the future was going to be of the business, that he knew it early, and as a result of that, there was always room for women within it. So he then had my brother joined first. My brother's the oldest, Hottie, right? And then my sister and I'm the second. My sister is the youngest. And through the years, we expanded, and my parents were incredibly supportive of allowing us to do that, of recommending that we do that, and helping us do it. I've said they actually, they refinanced their house to allow us to open offices in many cases. And we grew stronger, and we grew bigger, and the company gained more recognition. And by the mid 1980s, we were number one. And we had also started a mortgage company by then, and a title company. My brother and I are front of the house. My sister is the COO and always has been. That everything reported to her. That I say that we couldn't do, not that we wouldn't do, but that actually we couldn't do it. So we couldn't have had accounting report to us. And so we sort of have similar backgrounds educationally, but we also have some different skills. And I think that makes a difference. We are unique in the fact that we are one boy and two girls, or as today we would say one man and two women. In the next generation, that's more common now, but it was certainly not common 50 years ago. And most of us that knew other real estate companies were companies like ourselves. The brother either bought out the sisters, or the company was left to the brother, or the brother bought out the parents, whatever the structure was, where it was always the three of us. Once we came in, it was all of us after we finished college. And so I think that gave us a different perspective on things than other companies, to have two women always at the table. And we've always considered ourselves to be great salespeople. So if we can't sell people on our idea, then we shouldn't do it. So we don't take votes, and we don't make decisions that way, but we do work together very closely. And we have seen this company grow. A lot of women have chosen to be partnered with us through the years. The first company we bought of a real estate company was owned by a woman. that she had started in the late 60s and that we purchased in 1986, 87, somewhere in that range. And she was a small mom pop. Her husband sat at the desk in the front of the office, and she sold until the day she, really almost till she died. Long after she had sold, she continued to, after she had sold the company, she continued to sell. So we had an experience with that. So we began buying small companies, usually one office companies to start, and then multi-office companies until we started going into surrounding states and growing through in acquiring, but also growing organically at the same time. And I think that's pretty important, is how you do both and how you represent that both. So, it's interesting because I've said this last week, when you're reading about political finances of individual politicians and how much money they owe or don't owe. And I said, well, it's not just how much money you owe, it's whether you have to sign personally. And I have said that to me, that also happened in the late 80s. The day that we no longer had to sign, the day that our bankers believed that we had a stable enough business, that we were stable enough, that we were trusted, that the business itself would pay for itself always and pay for its debt. And so that's why we've never had outside partners. We've never had outside investors. We've never had outside partners. And I think it is strictly because of that reason that we believed our bankers were our partners in that sense, but they have believed in the strength of what was the three of us and now is, a multitude of other people. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I love that. And that sense of independence. I mean, Howard Hanna is the largest independent real estate brokerage in the country. And, you have attracted a lot of other businesses to your family over the years. And I'm curious, besides just being the largest and having, mortgage, title insurance, everything under one roof, what do you think is so special about your company? And, to what do you attribute that success in attracting so many amazing leaders and entrepreneurs?
I think when you talk about what makes us special, I think there are two things to look at. One, personally, what we are as a company, and then what we are business-wise as a company. So business-wise, I think we have always been incredibly innovative. We have always been looking at the next big thing. We've joked that we got our technology idea from my father, who had a Polaroid camera in 1957 and took pictures of his houses. And then had a Texas Instrument calculator, whatever it might be, but also was innovative in how he treated his agents, how he paid his agents, all of those programs that he built the beginning part of the company on. We were able to grow on that. And so that innovation and that looking at the needs of clients, I think, is what really makes us special, because we have two different levels of clients. We have our agents, and then we have the consumer out there, right? And we have all of these different companies that also provide those services. So what you may need is not the same thing as what the guy down the street may need. What the guy down the street may need is very different than somebody else may need. So they have to have some differences, whether it be in technology or whether it be in mortgage programs or whether it be the structure under which they buy the house. So we have to always be at the cutting edge of that. So I think that's what makes us special on the one side, that big why, why us, all right? On the other side, I think we are incredibly personable to this day, that we spend time with people, we're engaged, we're, a few weeks ago, I talked about getting my first lead myself ever on LinkedIn. And it was very exciting, and I went on the appointment myself too. I thought the agent was going to die, but the agent, it was like $140,000 house, but the agent prepared as if she was up against the 10, 20 top agents in the world for the best listing she was ever going to get. And it was great. It was great. I went on a listing appointment. It was, I really was rejuvenated by it. But I talked to somebody this morning that said that, we can't overlook that the houses that are 90 and 100 and $140,000 are the bread and butter of a lot of our businesses. And that's correct. But um, he and another agent had a question about, they reached out to us and I made the call. I think that's not just me making that call, but their state president or their manager or their regional, whatever it is in that division, them reaching out also makes the difference. So I think personally, we are so committed to um, our what our name is, who we are. And I don't mean just the Hannas, but to all of the people with us in that interpersonal relationship. I think that between those two things, that innovation, that progressiveness, that never sitting on our laurels on the one side, and on the other side, to be able to still keep that very human touch, the relationships with people, that makes a difference.
Well, and I love that story because it gives me such insight into your leadership style and who you are as a leader. I'm curious, I mean, you've been affiliated with every organization imaginable in this industry, leading real estate companies in the world. Before that, all the associations, the other brokerages. And so, what else, would you tell someone today about what makes a great leader?
I think what makes a great leader is confidence in themselves first. As I say, if you can't get up every day and believe you're the best there is, nobody else is going to believe it. Right? So you have to believe it yourself. And you have to, I think, have expression to let people know that. But I also think you also have to have intuitive knowledge of what is next. You have to be constantly thinking of what the next big thing is. You can't go to the back. So you have a past and you have a present and a future. And I think great leaders are able to perceive what that past is doing right now, what it means, because we can't change that past, and it's affected us in many ways that make us who we are. So we can't change the past on the one hand. On the other hand, the present is right in our face. And I was talking about this week too, that, suddenly I'm realizing that, we have to plan first quarter of next year now. All right. That's the future. So we have to take COVID into consideration, right? And what's going to happen then, and whether we can have hundreds of people in a room for an award ceremony. Do we have small ones? So that to me is a good example of it. You've got to take those traditions. You've got to merge them with reality right now and perceive what you're going to take them, no matter what it might be. So you can't decide you're a technology company tomorrow and swerve the whole company. You must take all of those into consideration. Compassion and empathy, I think, also are incredibly important for leaders, especially in our business, because I think we have so many people with us who are compassionate and who have empathy for the clients that they're with. And, and that's part of what they do every day. And so we have to have that for them also.
I love that. And, going back to your comment about quarterly planning, one of the things that I think a lot of people might look at is see how much you've accomplished and how much the company has grown, and wonder, what's next, what's still left to achieve. So I'm curious if you can give us a little bit of a sneak peek behind the hood. What do you want to achieve next year, the year after? Like, what's next for Howard Hanna?
Well, it's funny that you asked that, because yesterday afternoon, we had a meeting at 5:00, which is pretty unusual, but it's when everybody could meet to just talk about that subject, and to talk about what is, as we look at the opportunities we have for growth right now and acquisitions, what is that roadmap? What's the end game? I would say, is there an end game? We don't have an end game. So I will tell you that. We're not out there to go public. We're not out there to sell the company. We're not out there to change what we are, but we are out there to grow and enhance what we have. And I think when you look at why people make a decision to join us, they are exactly the reasons I discussed before. Yes, they like the kind of people we are. They like the philosophies of what we believe, and they like our mission and our values and our visions. They like all of that. But they also like the fact that we can bring to the table to them things that they probably can't do today, don't want to do today, right? And that isn't just somebody that wants to, because we have two kinds of people that join us. We have a young guy, Christian, who's 36, who's this amazing, wonderful young man. And every month we get a report from the time his company joined us. And he had 3 little offices doing a great job. And he's Mr. Motivation, and he's building his career. And we also have people that are looking to retire. All right. And then you have people like the Rands, that the Rands don't want to retire. Their mother might want to retire eventually, but I don't think she's ever going to. But that she has young leadership there. She has sons that are in their 30s and 40s that want to run that company, and we're the natural choice for them. So I think if we have the ability to do that for the future, which we do, then I think you're going to see future growth with us. Mhm.
I love that. And I love, you are 3 generations at Howard Hanna, so I should
We
mention.
are 3 generations. Yes. It's a big table, and it keeps getting bigger. Yes, but
That's awesome. And I'm glad to hear there's no exit plan, that you'll be around for a while. Because one of the things that you said earlier, and I want to explore a little bit more, is that innovation is so important. And, especially during a year like this, I think a lot of people are trying to understand what's next. And I'm curious, when you look ahead and you are trying to assess the market and the opportunities or threats that exist, do you have go-to resources? Do you have, your network you tap into? Like, what are the things that you use to stay ahead and to figure out what's next?
Well, certainly you mentioned the Leading RE, okay, and that's an important partnership to us, and the Realty Alliance and brokers that we know throughout the company. But today, we all have to have other people with us who bring skills that we hadn't necessarily ever developed, that are brighter than we are. So you've got to rely on your IT people. You have to rely on them being able to bring things to you, not necessarily the stuff that you see front of the house, but to make the back of the house work. Right? And last week we had our fall summits, which are usually, we have a big 5,000 person convention every other year. And in between we have summits, meaning these big meetings in every market, called by various names, but Motivation in North Carolina, summits here, fall rallies, but they've been called all by different names, but the summit. And we had one last week. We had one for, 5,000 people online. And one of our senior marketing people said, we might not have been able to do this 3 months ago, but with the skills we have learned, and with, again, the power working together of people from IT and people from marketing and outside resources, we pulled off a really pretty spectacular thing. So I think that when you look at that, when you look at innovation, it's not just you being the innovator today. It's us saying, how are we going to do the fall rallies? Okay. And then our great team saying, well, we could do it this way, we could do it that way, but let's try this. And so I think that's what you look for today, is great leaders who are doing things that you couldn't imagine. So you can still have the creative idea, but there's somebody in another department that's going to be able to make it work. You may have a great idea, but quite honestly, you can go to your state leadership, and your state leadership might look at you like you're nuts. Okay. That idea was good 5 years ago, because they have ideas that they're going to add to the pool. So I think that's what innovation is. It's not just, as I think a lot of companies in all industries have a tendency to do, just go buy the latest shiny penny. Mm-hmm. Go to a conference, you see this, you say, okay, this is going to change my life. I think you have to be very careful of doing that, because again, it has to fit into the culture, but more importantly, what's the long term? What is your end game from getting it? Mm-hmm. So again, it's one of those advantages to the pandemic, that all of these things that we had in place that our agents really hadn't learned well enough to use, they've learned to use it now. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I like earlier how you said that the way your siblings and you worked was, you always had to be able to sell the idea. So it was never a vote. If somebody wasn't on board, it wasn't good enough. That was your litmus test. So I love that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But that's true today too, though, that quite honestly, if one of our departments, education or technology, wants to do something, or somebody wants to come in and sell us something, you got to be a really good salesman to put it through, because there's a lot on the table, and if you can't sell it to us, obviously we can't sell it to the people around us, and that's true of us. If we can't sell it to our leadership, okay, if marketing can't make it the shiny penny that our agents all want, then it's not going to work. So it has to be that collaborative effort.
Well, I love it. So, okay, stepping outside of the company for a minute, talking about selling ideas. If you could sell the industry, the whole real estate industry, or maybe even the business world on an idea and say, this is the thing we have to do, or the next thing we have to develop, what would it be? What's missing that you really want today?
Whoa. What do I think is missing in the business world? Something that would filter communications. I think, and this is not something that's just because of the pandemic. I think there's so much data that comes at us, so much selling over the email. And what is the filter for that? Yes, we can put spam filters in, et cetera, but you don't want them too tight because you do want to hear new ideas. So I would love somebody to come up with something that could filter those every day for me and saying, these 5 you have to look at, all right? Or something that would ingrain in all of us that we don't have to share with the world, because I think we're so over communicated, and perhaps it's because of the pandemic, perhaps it's because it's an election year, but it's also when we pick up our own devices, and our devices that have so many things on it that overwhelms it. So if somebody could come up with a true filter that you could put in, like when you're on Zappos and you're ordering shoes, and you can filter color and size and everything, filter what you want to come through. I think it would make a better world for all of us. I think that we can only have so much thrown at us and remember so much and implement so much. And so your thinking time is greatly reduced today.
All right. Well, everyone listening, go invent it, and don't rely on Google and Facebook for it. Because
No, don't rely, because you'll get totally confused. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I love that. And I'm curious, so speaking about data, you said we're overwhelmed with data and communications, and you're absolutely right. One of the things, as an industry, I know a lot of agents don't necessarily love looking at data. Broker owners, leaders definitely do. And I'm curious how you look at, success for your agents and for the company from a metric standpoint. Do you have, do you set specific goals, or are you more focused on kind of the high level culture? And if people are feeling good, the company is going to do well, or kind of how do you view that?
Well, I think it has to be more than if people are feeling good, the company is doing well. I'm a big believer in accountability. So I think you do have to have metrics, and you have to have accountability. And a leader has to look at those metrics and has to look at what the key accountability is to them. And by the way, different leaders have key accountabilities. Okay. And so to me, every month of life, I look at a high level 3-year comparison of our agents. I can't do it for every office, for every agent, just to go through to see trends. How are agents doing within a market? Are they on track with last year? And that's what I work with when I'm talking to people again. So if I'm on a meeting call with state managers, and I will be this Friday, I will be on with all different management groups, and I'll talk about how important that is going into the last quarter, to look at those 3-year comparisons for their individual agents, to look at them for their offices, and see who is going to be uncomfortable at the end of the year. It goes back to, again, talking about that income advantage. What can we do to help people? And we have so many people that are over last year. It's just amazing to me, that are far in excess of what they've ever done before. And others who are down. Fortunately, very few are down dramatically. It's just been an amazing turnaround in our industry. But that being said, I think, so that's a metric that's important to me. I think market shares in real estate are important, but I found when we were recruiting new CMOs that that's what they all look at. Every company looks at their market share and growth, and how that relates. And it's so easy for us to get that for all of our markets and look for. So you have to look at your individual agents and your offices and then the whole market area to get a clear understanding of where you are. So yes. So I think you have to have those kinds of accountabilities, but I think that's why budgeting this time of year is so important. And to us, at least, budgeting has to come from the bottom up. Our budgeting starts at our offices or divisions, putting together a division, their expenses, their projection based on what they're doing for the next year, and then taking it up from there. Our sales office is based on agent production and what they believe agents can do, listing sales, et cetera, recruiting, retention, all of that, bringing that up to the top. And then it goes to a regional, then the state. And sometimes people over budget for unrealistic numbers, and sometimes people under budget. We don't like either. Many years ago, I would say, if your telephone bill is down, you're doing something wrong. So, but telephone bills are not, I don't know what do we have telephone bills today? I don't know at the office. I'm saying for hardline phones, but at your office. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, data is so cheap and VoIP and whatever you're using now.
But everybody, it amazes me. We supply phones and everybody uses their cell phones.
Yeah, a lot of people have said this year that I never thought I could get away with not buying coffee again, but no coffee for the office.
Well, that's why people are buying houses. Hasn't anybody figured this out? The rates are really low. People have saved all of this money, no travel, no coffee, no movies. And so they're getting more space.
Well, and it's wonderful to see.
Pardon?
It's wonderful to see that your agents, so many of your agents are doing so well too. I think it's
great to do that. But that means our clients are also, though, by the way. If our clients are buying and selling, and we're in a lot of broad markets, and we're not in the high flying markets necessarily, but all of those markets are doing well. And I think that's pretty amazing in itself.
Yeah. Well, speaking of buyers and sellers, I know there are some trends towards some of the newer models. And so I'm curious if I can ask just about independent brokerages as a whole, obviously you being the biggest and best example and just an amazing brand. What do you see in the future as it relates to what independents need to thrive and compete with franchises? Do you think they have what they need? And is the kind of growth and consolidation like, your family of companies has done necessary?
Well, let me say that when you belong to a franchise, okay, there can be tremendous benefits for you, right? Because you can get the benefits of that company. There are companies like ours that also we have 70 franchise offices at this point. And our franchise offices, they get the same benefits that we get, and they get that growth, but they are independents. They still consider themselves independent. So that's one kind of model. And then there are other models that are looking at changing the whole industry. So do I think independents are gone? Absolutely not. Absolutely, they're not gone. And in many markets, it's only independents that shine, by the way. You have to go down a couple of companies to get to franchise networks. So I think independents have that ability. I say to independents, the most important thing they can do is have a relationship with one banker, not go to a different little savings and loan. So you do business with them here and there and there. You take that risk, but you go to one place where you build out a relationship. So you're financially stable. That's the most important thing that you can get to be as financially stable. And I can tell you there were lots of years when I was young when we weren't, but when we were, we knew how important it was. And so I think that relationship is really key to your future success. And some of our franchises, we're helping them grow and buy other companies and extending their franchise. So I think independents are here to say some of them as a franchise, some of them on their own, but it seems to be there are less and less majors on their own. And then you look at the new models, which we've always had new models, and new models are great. It's like having new agents. You learn new things. You don't have to throw everything out because there's a new model there. How do you take that model? If there's something good in it, how do you add to it? Okay. Is that something that you could be doing to help people? Again, that's no different than innovation, by the way. Not all of us, we didn't invent Matterport, but we realized that Matterport was important. So we brought it in. innovation doesn't mean you have to, invent it. It just means that you have to be innovative enough to say, this is something that we need. Right? And I think that's something, so I think we all learn from each other. And so I think there is still a place for everybody in our industry, and lots of growth potential. And I go back and I say that my mother used to jokingly say when we were in high school, my parents had a lot of kids parties. There were always kids parties in our backyard. And she would say, someday all of these kids are going to buy houses. They were the baby boomers. Well, today we have that same tremendous growth of people that we had, that our company grew with, which was the baby boomers. We now have that with the millennials. And so there's so many opportunities for the future, that the real estate industry is not going to die tomorrow. It's not going to be over. It never has been, but it has the potential just to grow and expand, because the people that are 30-year-olds today will have to eventually get to be 90 also. So.
Eventually, but not for a while.
Not for a while. It may be hard to get past this 2.5% mortgage rate. That, that's something we all have to look at in the future. That can people, we've had it before where rates have gone way up, but will people move out of a 2.5% mortgage to a 5% mortgage?
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of our younger generations, I am curious, if you're looking back and advising yourself, maybe the 30-year-old Helen, what would you tell yourself that you know now to help yourself back then?
What I said earlier, which is that you have to believe you're the best that there is. And that it's an industry that we can all look at people and we say, oh, how did this person do this well? Or how does this person do that well? That person does that well because they believe in themselves and they work hard. You have to work really hard. And I would tell myself that I wasted time in the beginning of my career, not really focusing on the business that was around me. And I spent time going after the business outside. And I don't think that has ever changed. That your next door neighbor is a better potential client than somebody that's going to email you today and say, I have 2 leads a month for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that we need to work that. We need to work our own family and our own clients. And that's what our business is about. And, I think it's 54% of people would take a recommendation from an agent, from their neighbor or their family or friend, whereas only 12 of them go back to the agent they used before. Mm-hmm. That's pretty frightening, unless you realize that the people that are going back are because the agents are continuing to keep in touch with them, not constantly looking for new buyers and new sellers. So,
yeah. Well, I love it. Great advice. And obviously there are some things that data has shown they won't change. Agent commissions haven't significantly gone down. Agents are still important. The value of personal relationships is still important. And you have to innovate.
You have to innovate. I think agent commissions have gone down in certain markets. I think we have to be aware of that. I mean, not the agent's commission, the gross commission. Okay. The gross commission we're talking about, not how agents get paid, but the gross commission has, that's like anything. Marshalls and Nordstroms. You want Marshalls, prices and Nordstrom's service. And that's what the world is today. It has nothing to do with, anything. It has to do with who sends me emails all day long. Rue, I think it is, that I can buy high-end clothes at lower prices. Everybody wants a little bit of a deal. So we have to watch that, because that does happen in the industry. But again, great leaders are looking at how that affects. Mm-hmm. Great leaders are looking at how the fall through rates, which are down now, but they were up the last couple of years on home inspections, et cetera. Will that come back? So I think we have to be looking at those waves to see what is happening and what will happen. Mm-hmm.
Well, on that note, and last question, give us your top books, resources, podcasts, things you love for people to stay current with what's going on.
I can't tell you that there's some great real estate minds out there that I rely on, that I call. I read all the obvious ones, the headlines every morning. but I also I get the local business journals online from most of the markets we're in, and I read those headlines because I don't think mentors are just people in our business. And even at my age, you still have to look at mentors, right? And they are people that are in lots of different fields. So I wouldn't say to you that there's one source that I use more than others, but there is, to me, it's again having different points of view, not just one. It's not reading that same story 5 times. It's reading 5 different stories on different stuff. I mean, I love the Harvard Business Review, and I can, read stories that you would not think would pertain to everyday life. They might be on the average marketing director's salary. Not something I'm thinking about every day, but it gives me some other tips to something else. They might be on an issue today of HR issues, which I don't like to deal with, but I still have to know about them. So that to me is a great one because Harvard Business Review gives me an overview of all different businesses and subjects I wouldn't normally read on. Mm-hmm. And then I read I'm reading Greg Corey's, Lead Now right now, which is a little book that I picked up that I'm reading. And so I've always got something open somewhere on leadership. Mm-hmm.
Well, those are great tips, and thank you for sharing. This has been just an absolute pleasure talking to you, Helen. For everyone who is listening, this is Helen Hanna Casey, who's the CEO of Howard Hanna Real Estate Services. I'm Rachel Allard with Union Street Media. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.